Hi, this is Brett Johnson in New York City with the OneMedRadio. Today I'm with Alexei Marko, who is the CEO of Vancouver-based Neovasc, symbol NVC, on the Toronto Venture Exchange. Neovasc develops, manufactures, and markets innovative vascular devices to treat refractory angina, as well as a lot of other products to treat heart disease. Thanks for joining us today, Alexei.
Thank you very much, Brett.
So can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Neovasc and your technology, its applications, and specifically the reducer technology?
Absolutely. We are a medical device company focused on developing products for treating heart disease. We have a number of product platforms that we're working on. As you mentioned, the reducer is probably our lead product and our flagship product. And that product is intended to treat refractory angina. So refractory angina is late-stage heart disease that is no longer responding to other types of treatments, and there's a significant patient population out there with this problem, and we are in the process of commercializing a device which we believe will address a significant number of these patients. In addition to that, we also have a line of biological tissue products that we produce, and actually that business is already commercial and operating at cash flow positive, and we're also in the early stages of developing a mitral valve replacement therapy for treating mitral valve disease.
Can you tell us a little bit about the profile of the patient? I mean, who are these people, and what's their status when your technology is relevant to them?
Typically, a refractory angina patient is an older, I would almost refer to them as an end-stage patient with end-stage heart disease. These are patients who have typically had stents implanted already. They may have had a bypass graft or even two. They're on a variety of drugs to help treat their heart disease. But we've really reached the stage with these patients where the disease is sufficiently advanced that there's really not much more we can do for them. So they have inadequate blood flow to certain sections of their heart, often areas that have been damaged due to having a heart attack or multiple heart attacks. And they go and see their interventional cardiologist or their cardiologist with chest pain, and there's really nothing more that the physician can do for them. They may try to change their drug cocktail a little bit or something along those lines, but really they're untreatable patients with chronic heart pain.
And so what does your device do for them?
Our device works in a different way than most other treatments. Most treatments that are being concentrated on now focus on improving blood flow of the flow of blood to the heart muscle. And we acknowledge that that's a very effective approach, but in these refractory patients, you really reach the limit of what you can do on that side. And what we do is work on the outflow side. So we actually put a little device into the large vein that drains the heart muscle, and that device modulates outflow of blood, and it has the effect of more evenly distributing blood through the heart muscle. And what you'll find in these patients is there's certain territories of the heart that just aren't getting blood to them, and this is what's causing the angina pain. By implanting our device, what it does is essentially normalizes the flow of blood through the entire heart muscle, gets blood into these ischemic or poorly perfused areas, and provides relief of these symptoms. Interesting.
And can you talk about the procedure itself and how long it takes and what's involved?
Absolutely. The procedure itself, take a step back. The original idea for this was developed back in the 50s. It was a procedure done surgically and performed largely by a fellow named Claude Beck, a U.S. surgeon. And he did this by opening the chest of the patient and going around into the coronary sinus on the backside of the heart and actually tying that down using a suture and making it narrowed. What we've done is come up with a contemporary way of doing this. We achieve the same effect that he saw back doing the surgical procedure, but we do it in what takes sort of 10 to 12 minutes using a catheter. We make a small incision in the neck. We navigate a catheter down the jugular vein and into the heart. It's only about sort of 12 to 14 inches, and then implant a small device. It's very much like a stent. It's a specialized stent with an hourglass shape. The procedure takes, as I said, in a lot of cases it's now under about 10 minutes. The patient is generally conscious during the procedure, and it's very quick and simple, and they can be discharged the same day.
I know in one of your presentations you made it sort of akin to a garden hose, and how crimping a garden hose can kind of force the blood. Is that sort of the simple way to look at this?
Yeah, I think that's the best analogy that I've come up with to describe it. If you think about a garden hose, a leaky garden hose, if you just let the garden hose run freely, all the water will just come out the end of the garden hose, and that's really what's happening in the case of an ischemic heart or in these patients. And if what you do is sort of pinch off the end of the hose a little bit, you don't stop flow out of it, but you provide some back pressure on the outflow of the hose, you'll find that water will squirt out leaks and it'll come out back at the tap where you screw the hose on. And again, that's sort of what's happening here. You have these areas of high resistance to blood flow caused by the heart disease that these patients have, and the blood's avoiding them. It's going through taking the easiest path through, as would make sense. So if you create a little bit of back pressure, what it does is essentially force blood into these areas, just like you force water out of these leaks in the hose. And it's a very simple way of looking at it. And what we find is once you force blood into these areas, they actually start to these sections of the heart start to contract again and start to contract more vigorously, and that further reinforces the effect and helps them open up and reduces resistance. So yeah, that's a simple way of looking at it.
And this procedure, you said, has been effective and was done successfully many years ago.
Yes, it was. It was, as I said, it was done in the 50s by Dr. Beck, and he published a number of series of patient studies on this, and he showed a very good result with it. The reason it really sort of fell out of favor in the 60s, and really nobody thought about it since then, and the primary reason for that is, number one, it was very invasive. It was a very difficult procedure to get into the heart and get around to these veins and suture them down as he did. And secondly, CABG, or coronary artery bypass grafts, were, I wouldn't say invented, but became very commonplace and became a standard surgical procedure at that point in time. And they have a very positive effect on these patients. And as a result, everybody sort of moved over to doing that and forgot about the Beck procedure. And that doesn't in any way diminish the underlying value of the Beck procedure. It just sort of languished for a number of years until we started looking at it and decided that this was something that really should still be performed, but done in a much more effective and quick way that fits with contemporary medicine.
And I guess obviously technology has created the ability to do this thing non-invasively, so that changes, makes it possible. Can you tell us a little bit of where are you at in the development of the product from a regulatory point of view?
Absolutely. The product development is complete. We have done what we would call our first-in-man study on 15 patients, and we've actually followed those patients out to 3 years, and the results from that have been very, very solid. We are also in the midst of running our pivotal trial, a trial that we call COSIRA, and that's between 120 and 130 patient, double-blind, randomized, sham-controlled, multi-center study that's being run in Europe and in Canada. We're reaching the halfway enrollment point of that study and expect to complete enrollment in that early 2012, and the endpoint for that is a 6-month follow-up, so we'd have all the data middle of 2012. At that point, we would expect to be able to get a CE mark, which would allow us to start selling in Europe, and in fact, we've submitted our applications earlier, and we think we probably can get that CE mark in advance of completing this trial, the COSIRA trial. And that would allow us, again, to launch in Europe and begin to market the product there. And then following completion of the COSIRA trial, we will be initiating a U.S. trial that would go to supporting an FDA approval and a U.S. market launch of the product.
Can you tell us a little bit about the size of the market and how many patients are appropriate for this treatment?
We would estimate that there's about 1 million patients existing in Europe and about another 1 million patients existing in in the U.S. that have refractory angina. So these are patients that are on the patient list of cardiologists. So that would be the initial bolus that we can go after. And then you're looking at somewhere in excess of 500,000 new patients a year coming into that treatment and coming in for treatment who would be considered refractory. If you expand that definition a little bit and look at what I would call a recurrent angina patient, so not a true refractory case where there's no other option, but patients who are seeing multiple stent implantations, they've had a bypass, they're seeking continued treatments for ongoing chest pain. There's a significantly larger market, about 1 million patients a year that come into that. So a very large market and a very large clinical need for this.
Any sense about the economics or what the cost of the treatment might be?
The cost of the implantation is less than a typical cath lab procedure. A typical coronary stenting costs. I don't know the exact procedural cost. It will depend highly on what center it's performed in, but typically takes about an hour to do a routine stenting today. The procedure that we use to put a reducer in takes significantly less than that. We are turning patients around in about 10 minutes or so. So you would expect to turn around a cath lab quicker than a coronary artery stenting, and then the device cost will be very similar to a drug-eluting stent.
Terrific. And what do drug-eluting stents go for these days for our viewers?
Again, it depends very much on the market. Some are between $1,000 and $2,500.
Right. Okay. And then in terms of the reimbursement issues, do you see this to be easily reimbursable?
I see it, again, that very much depends on the jurisdiction, but I see it being easily reimbursable, and it would, in some cases, be reimbursed under existing codes. In other cases, we would likely need to seek a new code for it.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the company from a corporate point of view, sort of revenues and sort of the scope of your business, employees and such?
Yep. As I indicated, we have 3 product lines that we focus on. The Reducer is really our flagship product. Our tissue business is at the point of commercialization. We reported revenues of about $4.3 million in 2010. We're expecting to be north of $5 million in 2011. We have 50 employees and are expecting to see that grow nicely into 2012, along with revenues.
Terrific. How about your background? How did you get involved in the company, and what were you doing before you joined the firm?
My background, I'm an engineer by training, and I've been working in the medical device sector for coming up on about 20 years now. I've been in the vascular device side of things, and particularly endovascular devices, for about almost 15 years. I started a little company in the late 90s that developed a catheter-based product that was acquired by what eventually turned into Neovasc. I took over as the CEO of Neovasc in 2008, and in conjunction with that, structured a transaction to acquire a number of companies and really sort of create the company as it is now, and have been running it for the last 3+ years now.
Well, terrific. Well, it sounds like you have some very exciting technology and some very exciting times ahead of you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for joining us today. That is Alexei Marko, who is the CEO of Vancouver-based Neovasc, NVC, traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange. Thanks for joining us today, Alexei.
You're most welcome, Brett. Appreciate it.
It's Brett Johnson, New York City, OneMedRadio signing out. Good day.